Welcome to a drawing with Lord Karnage. One of the main characters in Ethel, the cyborg ninja, in addition to Ethel and Jesus and Windsquid, is Errol, the flying, talking spaceship. And I designed Errol and then sculpted a model and then drew the majority of Errol drawings in the book from that model, like that one. There's another one. And I have the model right here, as well as the brand new model, which I just created for the Magnum 9000 helicopter, as seen in Magnum Skywolf, which I am planning to release this year. Hopefully this summer. The wing fell off, so I used apparently way too much Gorilla Glue, but this doesn't have to look good. I know I'm not a great sculptor, but I need it to look good enough so that I can hold it up and draw it, whether I'm just looking at it or more often than not these days I take a picture of it and then work with the picture in my storyboarding within Photoshop. So there's Errol. And we're going to draw Magnum 9000 here in just a moment. Here, wrapped up in an old towel, is the Magnum 9000 helicopter, which I originally sculpted last year out of a big block of clay, a huge model, and I drew it for a little while and didn't really like. It wasn't exactly what I wanted. So then I started modifying it while working on the rough draft of Magnum Skywolf, and eventually just came up with this modified version. It's a little smaller and sleeker. It's got two outtakes there. Outtakes, vents, whatever you want to call them. It's got a nuclear reactor underneath it, jet engine. So I had to move the tail out of the way, or else, as I was drawing it, I'm like, well, obviously this nuclear-powered jet engine would rip the tail right off of this thing. But clearly this is engineered not to do that. Obviously. But here's the new one, and what I'm going to do is take a picture of this with the iPad, and then we're going to draw it so you can see how it goes from this to the actual book. Magnum 9000 supersonic helicopter, nuclear-powered supersonic helicopter. Part of the joke is that when the Magnum 9000 flies over you, it sounds like a shark. Not exactly sure what a shark sounds like, but apparently it sounds like Magnum 9000. So let me open up the camera here in the iPad. I use a giant iPad for drawing work. I use this for all of my rough draft drawing work. Can we see that? Take that. That's a good picture. That'll allow me to do some detail work. That's a huge picture. Boom. It's in there. All right, let's put it into Adobe Sketch. Here it is inside of Adobe Sketch, where I can increase it, rotate it if I want to. And I'm going to draw over it using the Apple Pen. Sometimes, in fact, most of the time, my drawings go through 3 phases: a rough sketch, a detailed sketch, and then inks. Occasionally, there's another layer on top of that for finished inks. And in the case of the machinery, which is not really my strong point, I'm good at designing this stuff, but not necessarily drawing it all the time. I'm better at storyboarding and writing. But I like to get stuff done right, and I like to get it done quickly. So in the case of machinery, I'll just basically eliminate the pencil sketch layer and immediately just go with a photo layer, which acts as a pencil sketch, and then put more refined sketches on top of that. So it eliminates one step in the process and helps me get consistency, because the end result is really what counts, and inconsistency is just unacceptable. That's really unprofessional. So let's get started here. I'm actually going to move the camera over to my other side since I can't reach around the tripod. So I'll clean the screen for everybody. After looking through the viewfinder, I realized how dirty it was. Been using it a lot. I use this to do all of my rough layout work. Most of my CGR doodles start here. And I've been writing Jesus 2, Jesus 3, Ethel 2, and Turbo Volcano, which is the new one on the iPad. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is drop the opacity down a bit. And I went with a white Sculpey this time, so I could see it a little better. one mistake I made with the Arrow model is that I used black Sculpey for that. But okay. And the more I work with the model, the more I become familiar with the shape, and I end up actually making slight refinements to design as I go. But I had to create the design to begin with, and I don't normally reach around a tripod like this to draw, so it's a bit awkward, but I'll get it. I'm still working out some of the details on the exhaust. This thing definitely comes around. It's an intake here, and this wraps around, feeds into it. There's a hump here. I'll do some more design work from the back of the model. Still some parts of the design I haven't refined yet. Blades connect to this thing. Actually, some of the doodles I was just doing for Patreon, I worked out the color scheme a bit to make it actually look like a shark, since it sounds like a shark. But this technique worked really well for Errol and Ethel the Cyborg Ninja, so I am planning to continue to use it here for Magnum Skywolf, which I'm hoping it's not going to be as... I'm going to break it into multiple issues. So the first issue will probably be something like 40, 50 pages, and that'll be out, with any luck, by July, August. Depending on how long it takes me to do the finishing work. The finishing work is what takes the longest. A couple of these new books catch on. I may end up working with some other artists on these projects for the next year, but we'll see how this year goes. Since I'd like to concentrate more on the writing and the storyboarding process personally. But all these stories begin with characters, and that's what I do. But this is a two-pilot helicopter, since Magnum 9000 is piloted by Hunter Skywolf, and the co-pilot is Haley. I'm still working out some of the details on the names. There's a vent down here, which you really can't see much from this angle. And sometimes I get confused on what I'm looking at, so I have to hold the model up, and actually I was wrong. The vent comes out a little further. See? I'm not quite there yet. Eventually I'll just memorize this, but until I memorize it, alright. Well, that's the quick model. So what I'll do is I have a page layout or something where the Magnum 9000 flies in and blows up a custom van, or some bad guys riding motorcycles. And I roughly sketch out how I want it to look. Then I'll photograph it the way that I want it to look, and I draw it. And I take out the sketch layer, or the photo layer, I'm sorry. And there we are, we're left with the rough pencils of the Magnum 9000, and then blades, which I usually don't do detail work on the blades. I like to represent them, but since they're always in motion, I'll just throw them in there. And then sometimes it's using its nuclear-powered jet engine to fly super fast. And then the next thing I would do is go through with shading and final inks. And depending on where it's flying, maybe even throw in a background some action lines or dust being kicked up or something. And word balloons like So there you go. That is the Magnum 9000 nuclear powered. You got to get this in order. Nuclear powered supersonic attack helicopter. Thanks for watching. And you can find my stuff again on Amazon. Classic Game Room is brought to you by Ethel the Cyborg Ninja, Book 1, and Jesus the Coked Up Chicken #1, Special Edition, now on Amazon.